Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Preimesberger, editor of eWEEK. Thanks for joining us today on our latest segment of eWEEK eSpeaks, conversations with IT thought leaders throughout the business. Our interviewee today is Rich Petersen. Rich is the president and co-founder of JetStream, a relatively new data management company in IT. And Rich, welcome.
Thanks very much.
Tell us, Rich, a little bit about your background and about the company itself.
So JetStream Software was launched in 2018, and my two co-founders and I have been working together over more than a decade. But in this particular company, our focus is on providing a software platform for service providers to deliver DR as a service to enterprise customers. So we're a part of the trend that is the shift from on-premises solutions for backup that are centered around storage systems to cloud-based services for continuous data protection, disaster recovery, and business continuity.
Very good. And so you say the company's 2 years old, but you must have kind of you have to have a new generation type look at what's needed in this area. We've had disaster recovery solutions for years and years based on old paradigms. What is new about what JetStream Software brings to the table here?
Sure. I like the adage that the early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese. And we're kind of the second mouse in this industry. There is this shift to cloud-based disaster recovery services. And I think the initial forays into the shift to the cloud involved taking existing solutions that were designed for on-premises DR and just enabling them from a cloud service provider's data center. And, so that missed out on the ability to take full advantage of technologies like object storage for economies of scale, or to manage recovery resources in a fungible manner to realize economies of scale. So our platform was designed for the service provider who's serving the enterprise customer. And the solution was designed from the ground up with that use case in mind.
Okay, so let's say, tell me how it's actually accessed. So a company or an individual or a business of some kind subscribes to a cloud service and also takes a look at the menu of disaster recovery services. Is that it? And then they would choose JetStream as their choice, or what?
Sure. That's roughly it in a nutshell. They would install the JetStream software on premises. We're very centered around VMware environments, which are the vast majority of enterprise platforms. So in the VMware environment, we capture data continuously through a technology called IO filters. And these IO filters enable us to capture the data and immediately begin the process of replicating it to the cloud data center. So we don't use snapshots, which again, intermittent snapshots leave a lot of data vulnerable in those windows between the last snapshot and the current moment. Snapshot-based technologies also can have a detrimental impact on application performance. And that's why many organizations will actually just do their snapshots at night, do nightly backups, just like they did 20 years ago when they were backing up to tape. So instead of that, what we have is a solution for continuous data protection. At the moment that data is written on premises, it's also being replicated to the cloud. So that's the first thing. The second thing that's really significant here is that in the cloud, we replicate directly into an object store. So there's no intermediary software. Everything is put directly into object storage, which is the most economical manner of storing the copies of the data.
Yeah. And how does that work for retention of data and for access of data? Is it slowed down at all because it's all in one big large volume, or not?
That's part of the technology that we've developed, is the ability to rapidly get the data from the object store and return it into a recovery environment, a VMware environment in the cloud provider's data center, so that you have a very low recovery time objective, or RTO. So there are really three critical metrics in our space. The first is application performance impact. Backup technologies can have a detrimental impact on application performance. So we've got a technology that avoids that problem. The second metric is recovery point objective, which is the amount of data that's vulnerable in the event of a disaster. Now, if you're doing a nightly backup, that means it may be a full day's worth of data that's vulnerable. In our case, our RPOs are in seconds because we're constantly replicating the data directly and immediately to the object store. And the third metric is what you pointed out, the recovery time objective. And we've got technologies that enable that to be minimized as well, so that your business continuity is really protected. And in the event that you do have an incident in your data center, you can go to the cloud, your virtual machines will be there, all of their data will be there, and you'll be back and running as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the snapshot. I was going to ask you about that. That has been, a standard feature of disaster recovery. And for those who may not know what a snapshot is in this context, it's basically a snapshot of the entire data volume at a point in time. And then as new data comes in, incremental data comes in, it's added to it, and another snapshot is taken. Is that a fair assessment of that?
So snapshot-based backups are sufficient for a lot of workloads because the data is not absolutely business critical. And when we talk about moving to the cloud, it was relatively straightforward to take backup snapshots and just upload them to your cloud. What organizations have been struggling with is how to develop a cloud-based solution for continuous data protection that has economies of scale, that is affordable for the enterprise. And that's something that we've really focused on addressing with our technology. It's the ability to provide protection that has an RPO of seconds, that is based in the cloud, so it's a set it and forget it type of technology. And the cloud service provider has the advantages of multi-tenancy and economies of scale, so they can deliver the service more economically than if the enterprise were doing it for themselves.
Yeah, I got it. And yeah, so that's fabulous. We have just a couple of minutes left. Can you talk about, or maybe describe, a trend that you're seeing here in your area that you think might be important to a reader of eWEEK or somebody who's considering buying your service?
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody's been affected by the pandemic, right? Everybody, people are working remotely. And what this has done is this has accelerated the digital transformation of almost every enterprise. So much of our assets where we had some type of on-premises or physical copy of our information, we're now entrusting that to systems that are maintained by the IT organization. And therefore, those assets become all the more valuable. It's like the expression, put all your eggs in one basket, but keep your eye on that basket. And that's what digital transformation really is. And so organizations are realizing the criticality of data protection to their ongoing business operations. They're looking to the cloud increasingly. And when I say the cloud, I mean really the hyperscale providers, AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform, et cetera. So we're seeing a big shift in enterprise budgets to these hyperscale providers. And data protection is no exception. So what they're doing is they're taking dollars that would have been spent with a storage systems vendor for that storage vendor's backup software, and instead they're purchasing disaster recovery as a service from somebody like Microsoft Azure.
Yeah, the disaster recovery as a service is a fabulous thing, and the continuous updating and the continuous nature of what JetStream software does. It's parallel in a lot of ways to the whole Agile development process, where software is continually updated. If there's a mistake or if there's a problem, it's immediately fixed and then distributed. It sounds like that's very similar to what you do. Is that it?
Yeah, there's a certain amount of agility that we try to bring to disaster recovery services so that you can be confident that your systems and your business processes themselves are protected against disasters of all types, whether we're talking about a mechanical failure, a disgruntled employee, malware or ransomware. There are so many threat vectors these days that you have to take into mind and protect yourself against.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I guess to close, I recall writing about disaster recovery 10, 15 years ago when I started with eWEEK. And those systems were expensive and complicated to deal with. And now you just subscribe to the service. And you basically, is it like you have a menu that you pick the services that you need, or is it all on one platform, or what?
Yeah, well, it's a combination of things, obviously. In the case of, say, a Microsoft Azure, you would be replicating data into blob storage, Azure blob storage. And in our case, because we are so VMware centric, virtual machines would be recovered into the Azure VMware solution, which is basically the VMware platform hosted inside the Azure data center. So there is a combination of subscriptions that go into a disaster recovery offering, but those can be consolidated and consumed and billed in a consolidated manner.
Very good.
So it becomes much simpler to consume this service, and your IT professionals can focus on the things that really give your organization strategic advantage, and they basically outsource the more custodial tasks of things like data protection to a cloud-based service.
Yeah, I was going to ask, my final question would be, can a line of business person use this software if necessary? Do you have to be a highly trained technician?
It's a combination. I think you want to have the line of business people involved, because one of the important first steps in data protection is what is referred to as a business impact analysis, which is asking yourself, what do we do as an organization? And then what dependencies, what applications support those business processes? And so how do we best protect them? How much downtime could we potentially live with? What would be the cost of lost data to our organization? And how do we bring these all together and protect them in a comprehensive manner? And then I think you would go to your IT professional, because in the era of the cloud, IT professionals aren't just doing the job of technical wizardry. They're also managing cloud providers' catalogs and figuring out budgets and figuring out service offerings and making decisions as to what's the best thing for their organization. So, the role that IT plays has shifted quite a bit, because now they spend a lot of time literally shopping for cloud-based services, and that's appropriate.
Yeah. Rich Petersen, president and co-founder of JetStream Software, a 2-year-old startup dealing with disaster recovery as a service in the cloud. Thank you very much for being our guest on eSpeaks.
Chris, thank you very much for your time.
That's been fun. Good to meet you. And for everybody following along this deep into our conversation, thank you very much. Have a great rest of your eWEEK. Thanks for joining us on eWEEK eSpeaks. Go to eWEEK.com to hear more conversations with IT thought leaders.